What if guidance was never meant to be uniform? What if every heart is addressed by God in a language only it can understand? Ibn Arabi invites us into a radical intimacy with the divine where the spiritual journeys are identical, yet all are equally valid. Ibn Arabi teaches that the heart is not merely an emotional center, but a living mirror in which the divine discloses himself in endlessly unique ways to him. God does not reveal himself once, in one fixed form, for all people equally. Rather, God is known according to the capacity, readiness, and inner shape of each heart. This is why the people experience God in the same way, even when they follow the same path, read the same scripture, or utter the same prayers. In Ibn Arabi's metaphysics, the heart is vast more expansive than the heavens because it can contain meanings that the intellect cannot grasp. Each heart has its own preparedness, its own spiritual taste, and its own divine address. God speaks to the heart in the form that the heart can bear. For one, God appears as mercy; for another, as majesty; for another, as beauty; for another, as awe or intimacy. None of these are false. They are partial unveilings of an infinite reality that can never be exhausted by a single form. This is why Ibn Arabi warns against imprisoning God within rigid concepts. When a person claims that only their understanding of God is true, they are not defending God, they are limiting him. God, in Ibn Arabi's vision, is free from our definitions. He manifests himself according to the belief of the servant, not because belief controls God, but because the heart acts like a lens. The same light passes through different lenses and appears as different colors. Every heart, therefore, has its own divine relationship, shaped by its wounds, its longing, its love, and its sincerity. Some hearts meet God through fear and discipline, others through love and tenderness. Some are guided through silence, others through questions, others through loss. Ibn Arabi does not see these differences as deviations, but as signs of divine wisdom. If God wanted uniformity, he would have created identical hearts. Diversity itself is a proof of intentional design. This understanding transforms how we view others on the spiritual path. Instead of judging someone's relationship with God by our own experience, Ibn Arabi invites humility. What nourishes one heart may starve another. What awakens one soul may confuse another. Spiritual arrogance dissolves when we realize that God may be closer to someone in a way he cannot recognize, simply because it does not resemble our own encounter. Ibn Arabi also emphasizes responsibility. Since each heart has a unique relationship with God, each person must be truthful to their own inner unveiling. Borrowed faith is fragile. Imitated certainty eventually cracks. A heart must respond to the divine as it is personally known, not as inherited ideas demand. True faith, in this sense, is not conformity, but authenticity before God. Yet this individuality does not lead to chaos or relativism. All hearts face the same divine reality. They simply receive it differently. Like rain falling on varied soil, the water is one, but the fruits are many. Ibn Arabi's vision holds unity and diversity together. Without contradiction, the one appears as many, and the many point back to the one. In the end, Ibn Arabi reminds us that the goal is not to copy another person's relationship with God, but to deepen our own. When the heart becomes sincere, polished, and receptive, it recognizes the divine presence that has always been addressing it personally. And when this realization dawns, judgment fades, compassion expands, and the believer learns to honor the sacred mystery unfolding uniquely within every heart. Ibn Arabi explains that divine revelation is not a uniform event imposed equally upon all people, but a living encounter shaped by the inner capacity of the heart receiving it. God discloses himself according to the preparedness of each heart, not because the divine is limited, but because the human vessel is. Just as light takes the color of the glass through which it passes, divine knowledge appears in forms suited to the spiritual condition of the seeker. This principle allows for an infinite variety of experiences of God without fragmenting divine unity. In this vision, The heart is not a passive container, but an active participant in the encounter with the divine. Its state, intentions, and inner purification determine what aspect of God becomes visible. A heart overwhelmed by fear will perceive divine majesty and power, while a heart softened by love will encounter mercy and tenderness. Another heart, refined by knowledge and patience, may witness wisdom and balance. None of these perceptions negate the others. Each is a partial unveiling of the same absolute reality. Ibn Arabi insists that God is known only through self-disclosure, and self-disclosure never occurs in abstraction. It happens within the limitations and qualities of the receiver. This is why he famously teaches that people worship God as they imagine him. Yet God is beyond every imagination. The imagination does not create God, but it shapes the form in which the divine is encountered. The heart's capacity becomes the horizon within which divine presence is recognized. This understanding dissolves spiritual arrogance. If God reveals himself according to capacity, then no individual can claim absolute comprehension. Every spiritual insight is true within scope and incomplete by nature. A person who experiences God primarily as law and command is not wrong, nor is the one who encounters God as love and intimacy. Each is responding to a divine address tailored precisely to their inner readiness. Conflict arises only when limited experiences are mistaken for total truth. Ibn Arabi also highlights that spiritual growth involves the expansion of capacity, not the replacement of one image of God with another. As the heart is purified, it becomes able to receive more comprehensive disclosures. A seeker may begin with fear, then move into hope, then love, then bewilderment. Each stage does not cancel the previous one, but integrates it into a wider vision. God appears new at every moment, yet remains the same in essence. The diversity of divine disclosure is therefore not a sign of contradiction, but of mercy. If God were to reveal himself in his fullness to every heart without regard for capacity, no heart could endure it. The veiling and gradual unveiling of divine reality protect the seeker. Even prophetic revelations differ in tone and emphasis, reflecting the unique role and capacity of each prophet. Ibn Arabi sees this as further proof that divine wisdom honors receptivity. This perspective also reshapes how guidance is understood. Guidance is not merely information transmitted from above, but transformation occurring within. Two people may hear the same verse, yet one is shaken to tears, while the other remains unmoved. The difference lies not in the verse, but in the heart receiving it. Divine speech is constant, but its impact varies according to the inner ear that hears it. By recognizing capacity as the measure of disclosure, Ibn Arabi places responsibility on the seeker to refine the heart rather than argue over forms. The task is not to demand a certain vision of God, but to become worthy of deeper unveiling. Purification, humility, patience, and sincerity enlarge the heart's ability to receive truth. Knowledge without transformation only hardens the vessel and restricts further disclosure. Ultimately, Ibn Arabi teaches that every heart lives within a personal divine horizon, carefully measured by God himself. No heart is neglected, and no disclosure is random. Each unveiling is precisely what that heart needs at that moment of its journey. The infinite bends toward the finite without losing its infinity, offering himself in forms that guide rather than overwhelm, illuminate rather than destroy, and invite the seeker to keep expanding the inner capacity through which God is known. Ibn Arabi describes the heart as the most dynamic and alive reality within the human being, a subtle organ capable of reflection, transformation, and direct witnessing of the divine. Unlike the intellect, which fixes meanings and draws boundaries, the heart remains fluid, capable of turning from one state to another without contradiction. This fluidity is precisely what allows the heart to serve as a living mirror for divine manifestation. God is not reflected in the heart as a static image, but as a constantly renewing presence that changes according to the heart's condition. The heart, in Ibn Arabi's understanding, is polished or clouded depending on how a person lives, loves, and remembers God. When the heart is veiled by ego, attachment, and heedlessness, divine light is distorted or obscured. When it is purified through sincerity, remembrance, and humility, it becomes a clear mirror in which the attributes of God are reflected. The mirror does not generate the image. It reveals what stands before it. Similarly, the heart does not produce divine reality, but makes it visible according to its clarity. This mirror-like nature of the heart explains why spiritual experiences differ so profoundly from person to the person. A cracked mirror reflects a fragmented image, while a clean mirror reflects harmony and coherence. Yet both are facing the same reality. Ibn Arabi uses this insight to emphasize self-work over judgment of others. If a person wishes to deepen their experience of God, the task is not to correct the world, but to polish the heart. The quality of reflection depends entirely on the state of the mirror. The heart's ability to reflect multiple divine attributes is central to Ibn Arabi's vision. God possesses infinite names and qualities, and no single heart can reflect them all at once. One heart may reflect mercy strongly, another wisdom, another power, another beauty. Over time, as the heart expands, it may come to reflect opposing attributes without confusion. Love and awe, intimacy and distance, gentleness and rigor can coexist within the same heart when it becomes spacious enough to hold them. This is why Ibn Arabi considers the heart superior to rigid belief structures. Beliefs tend to confine God within concepts, whereas the heart remains open to surprise. The true knower of God is not the one who has defined him, but the one whose heart is ready to receive him in whatever form he appears. Such a heart does not cling to past unveilings or demand repetition. It recognizes that God is ever renewing his self-disclosure, and that fixation is a form of spiritual blindness. The living heart also explains the phenomenon of spiritual transformation. When a person undergoes a profound inner shift, their entire understanding of God can change, not because God has changed, but because the mirror has been altered. What once appeared distant may now feel intimate. What once inspired fear may now awaken love. Ibn Arabi sees this not as inconsistency, but as maturation. Each transformation reveals a deeper layer of reality that was previously hidden. In this framework, remembrance of God is not merely repetition of words, but an act of continual polishing. Every moment of awareness clears another layer of dust from the mirror of the heart. Forgetfulness, on the other hand, allows the mirror to dull. The heart is never neutral. It is either becoming clearer or more obscured. This dynamic nature makes spiritual life an ongoing process rather than a fixed achievement. The heart's reflective capacity also carries ethical implications. Since the heart mirrors divine qualities, a purified heart naturally expresses compassion, justice, patience, and generosity. These are not imposed behaviors, but spontaneous reflections of what the heart is witnessing within. When divine mercy is present in the heart, it overflows into action. Spiritual realization, in Ibn Arabi's view, is inseparable from character. Ultimately, the heart as a living mirror means that knowing God is not about possession of ideas, but about presence. The clearer the heart, the more faithfully it reflects the divine. And because the divine is infinite, the heart's journey of reflection never ends. Each unveiling prepares the heart for another. Each reflection invites deeper clarity. And the mirror continues to turn toward a reality that is always offering itself anew. Ibn Arabi presents the heart as the most subtle and powerful organ of perception within the human being, far beyond emotion or sentiment. The heart, in his metaphysics, is alive, turning constantly, capable of receiving meanings that cannot be grasped by reason alone. It is called a mirror because it reflects divine realities. Yet unlike an inanimate mirror, it changes, deepens, and transforms according to the inner state of the one who carries it. The heart is not fixed in one orientation. It turns from state to state, from constriction to expansion, from veiling to unveiling, And this movement is the very reason it can witness God. For Ibn Arabi, the heart reflects the divine according to its clarity. When the heart is clouded by ego, fear, attachment, or pride, divine light is still present but appears fragmented, distorted, or harsh. When the heart is purified through remembrance, sincerity, patience, and humility, it becomes smooth and luminous, capable of reflecting divine attributes with balance and harmony. The mirror does not choose what it reflects, it only reveals what it is facing, and likewise the heart does not invent God, it reveals the form in which God discloses himself to it. This explains why two people standing in the same place of worship may experience entirely different spiritual realities. One heart may encounter overwhelming awe, another quiet intimacy, another confusion, another certainty. Ibn Arabi does not see this as contradiction, but as evidence of the heart's role as a reflector. The divine presence is one, but its appearance varies according to the inner polish of the mirror. Judging another's experience becomes meaningless when one understands that each heart reflects according to its own condition. The heart's reflective nature also means it can hold opposites without breaking, unlike the intellect, which seeks consistency and rejects paradox. The heart can reflect majesty and beauty at the same time, distance and nearness together, fear and love without conflict. Ibn Arabi views this capacity as essential for true knowledge of God, because God himself encompasses all opposites. A narrow heart reflects only one attribute and mistakes it for the whole, while an expanded heart begins to witness divine complexity without confusion. Because the heart is living, it is always in motion. Today it may reflect mercy, tomorrow discipline, later wisdom, later bewilderment. These shifts do not indicate instability, but growth. Ibn Arabi teaches that every unveiling prepares the heart for another, and clinging to a previous reflection becomes a veil itself. When a person insists that God must appear as he once did, they freeze the mirror and block further disclosure. The living heart remains open, receptive, and surrendered to continual renewal. This is why Ibn Arabi places such emphasis on inner work rather than outer conformity. Actions matter, but their deepest purpose is to refine the heart. Prayer, fasting, remembrance, and service are not goals in themselves, but methods of polishing. The mirror, when practiced without presence, they lose their reflective power. When practiced with awareness, they gradually clear the heart of rust, allowing divine qualities to shine through more clearly. A heart as a mirror also explains spiritual transformation. When someone undergoes a deep inner change, their entire understanding of God may shift. What once felt distant may become intimate. What once inspired fear may soften into trust. Ibn Arabi insists that God has not changed, only the mirror has. Each transformation reveals a layer of reality that was previously hidden by the heart's limitations. Ethics, in this view, rise naturally from reflection. A heart reflecting divine mercy expresses compassion without effort. A heart reflecting divine justice inclines toward fairness. A heart reflecting divine generosity gives freely. Moral behavior is not imposed from outside, but flows outward from what the heart is witnessing within. This is why Ibn Arabi sees character as a sign of realization, not merely discipline. The greatest danger to the heart is rigidity. When belief hardens into certainty without humility, the mirror becomes fixed, reflecting only one image and rejecting all others. Ibn Arabi warns that such certainty often masks fear rather than faith. The truly faithful heart remains spacious, knowing that no single reflection can exhaust the infinite. Its strength lies not in definition, but in openness. The living mirror of the heart is therefore never complete. As long as the heart turns, it remains capable of receiving new disclosures, new meanings, new depths of intimacy. Every moment becomes an opportunity. Ibn Arabi views spiritual diversity not as a flaw in religion or failure of guidance, but as a deliberate expression of divine wisdom. The existence of multiple paths, temperaments, and spiritual experiences reflects the infinite richness of the divine reality itself. If God is limitless, then his manifestations must also be limitless. Uniformity in spiritual experience would suggest limitation, while diversity points directly to abundance and mercy. In Ibn Arabi's understanding, God discloses himself differently to different hearts because no two hearts are identical in capacity, history, or inner orientation. Each person carries a unique combination of experiences, wounds, strengths, and longings, and divine guidance meets each one precisely where they are. What appears as difference from the outside is, in truth, tailored care. Diversity is not deviation from truth, it is truth appearing in forms suited to individual readiness. This perspective radically reshapes how disagreement is understood. When spiritual diversity is seen as misguidance, conflict becomes inevitable. Each group attempts to defend its own experience as the only valid one. Ibn Arabi challenges this tendency by reminding seekers that every perception of God is partial. No heart can contain the whole. When partial truths compete, they become distorted. When they are recognized as fragments of a greater whole, harmony becomes possible. Ibn Arabi often emphasizes that God is known according to belief, not because belief defines God, but because belief defines the believer's horizon. A person who knows God through law and structure encounters divine order and command. Another who approaches through love encounters beauty and intimacy. Another who walks through service encounters generosity and care. These are not contradictions, but complementary unveilings. Each reveals something real, yet none reveal everything. Spiritual diversity also protects humanity from tyranny of interpretation. If only one spiritual expression were legitimate, power would concentrate around those who control it. Ibn Arabi's vision decentralizes spiritual authority by placing the locus of divine encounter within the heart. This does not eliminate guidance or tradition, but it prevents them from becoming idols. True authority belongs to God's ongoing self-disclosure, not to frozen interpretations of the past. For Ibn Arabi, recognizing diversity as divine wisdom demands humility. The seeker must accept that God may be speaking to others in ways they do not understand. This humility does not weaken faith, it deepens it. A faith that cannot tolerate difference is fragile, threatened by anything unfamiliar. For Ibn Arabi, recognizing diversity as divine wisdom demands humility. The seeker must accept that God may be speaking to others in ways they do not understand. This humility does not weaken faith, it deepens it. A faith that cannot tolerate difference is fragile, threatened by anything unfamiliar. A faith grounded in divine infinity becomes spacious, confident without being defensive. This understanding also transforms how error is perceived. Ibn Arabi does not deny that confusion and illusion exist, but he distinguishes between error and difference. Error rises when ego claims finality for a partial view. Difference arises when multiple partial views coexist without claiming totality. Most religious conflict, in his view, comes not from falsehood, but from absolutized fragments of truth. Diversity also serves as a means of spiritual education. Encountering paths different from one's own forces the heart to expand. It reveals the limits of one's assumptions and invites deeper listening. Ibn Arabi sees this friction not as a threat, but as a mercy. God educates humanity through contrast, allowing different reflections of truth to illuminate one another. Even within a single individual, spiritual diversity unfolds over time. A person may move through fear, hope, love, certainty, and bewilderment across their life. Ibn Arabi considers this inner diversity essential to maturation. A static spiritual identity is a sign of stagnation. Growth requires movement, and movement requires difference. Ultimately, Ibn Arabi teaches that unity is not achieved by erasing diversity, but by understanding it. Unity lies in recognizing that all sincere paths point toward the same infinite reality, even when they appear contradictory on the surface. When diversity is honored as divine wisdom, judgment softens, compassion expands, and the seeker learns to see God's hand at work in forms once dismissed as other. In this vision, the world itself becomes a vast spiritual classroom filled with countless signs pointing toward the One. Each difference becomes an invitation to witness a new facet of divine truth, and every sincere path, however unfamiliar, becomes a reminder that the infinite cannot be confined to a single road or voice. Ibn Arabi places immense importance and authenticity in the spiritual journey, teaching that a living relationship with God cannot be inherited, borrowed, or copied. While tradition provides guidance and structure, the actual encounter with the divine must be personal and inwardly realized. Imitated belief may offer temporary comfort, but that lacks the vitality needed to sustain the heart through doubt, suffering, and transformation. Only a faith that has been tasted directly can endure. For Ibn Arabi, God addresses each heart individually, and therefore each heart must respond in truthfulness to what it has been shown. When a person adopts beliefs merely because they are socially accepted or intellectually admired, the heart remains disengaged. Such belief becomes fragile, easily shaken by hardship or contradiction. Authentic faith, by contrast, is rooted in experience, not in imitation. It grows from sincerity rather than conformity. This does not mean rejecting tradition or scholarship. Ibn Arabi himself was deeply grounded in sacred knowledge. However, he warns against confusing maps with destinations. Sacred teachings are signposts pointing toward God, not substitutes for the encounter itself. When signs are mistaken for the goal, faith becomes rigid and defensive. The seeker begins to protect ideas instead of pursuing truth. Authentic faith requires courage because it demands inner honesty. A person must acknowledge what they truly know and what they merely repeat. This honesty often exposes uncertainty and vulnerability, but Ibn Arabi views this as a necessary stage. God does not reveal himself fully to borrowed certainty. He responds to humility, longing, and sincerity. A heart that admits its not knowing is more open to divine unveiling than a heart filled with second-hand answers. Imitated belief also limits spiritual growth. When someone clings to inherited ideas without inner verification, they resist transformation. New insights feel threatening rather than illuminating. Ibn Arabi teaches that God renews his self-disclosure at every moment, and a heart locked into imitation cannot recognize this renewal. Authentic faith, on the other hand, remains flexible, capable of expanding as the heart's capacity increases. Personal unveiling does not lead to isolation or arrogance. Because genuine experience produces humility, the more a person truly encounters God, the more they realize how little they know. Ibn Arabi describes true knowers as those who are perpetually in awe, not those who claim mastery. Authentic faith softens the heart, while imitated belief often hardens it. This distinction also reshapes religious identity. Instead of defining oneself solely by labels or affiliations, the seeker becomes defined by presence, character, and sincerity. Ibn Arabi emphasizes that God looks at hearts, not at claims. A heart alive with remembrance is closer to God than a heart full of correct terminology, but empty of awareness. Authentic faith naturally expresses itself through character. When belief is real, it transforms behavior without force. Compassion, patience, and humility rise as reflections of inner truth. Imitated belief, by contrast, often relies on external enforcement. Actions become performative rather than expressive. Ibn Arabi sees this as a sign that faith has not yet reached the heart. He also warns against comparing one's inner journey with that of others. Since each heart has its own divine relationship, authenticity means honoring one's unique unfolding. Measuring oneself against another's path leads either to pride or despair, both of which veil the heart. Authentic faith listens inwardly while remaining respectful of outward guidance. In Ibn Arabi's vision, the ultimate goal is not to possess correct beliefs, but to be truthful before God. This truthfulness allows the heart to receive ongoing guidance, rather than clinging to past certainty. Authentic faith is alive, breathing, and responsive, while imitated belief is static and brittle. By choosing authenticity over imitation, the seeker steps into a direct relationship with the divine, where faith is no longer an idea to defend, but a reality to live. In this space, belief becomes witnessing, practice becomes presence, and the heart learns to walk toward God without borrowed light, guided instead by the unveiling that meets it exactly where it stands.